I know you turned red, Mike, so I'm just going to flatter you here before you get on air, and we're going to rock and roll. Okay, that shot looks fantastic. Mike, we're kicking the tires on this new studio. You look great, dude.
Thank you. And I would say this, that President Trump is announcing his vice president today, but he's already announced his viceroy, Mike Davis. And we are going to go back to Washington after November 5th, 2024, starting on January 20th, and we're going to clean up that place. So I'm very excited.
So this is the vice. Maybe this is the vice that Donald Trump has been teasing. Perhaps he's once again doing an end run around, and he's just saying the vice I really meant was Viceroy Mike Davis. Make sure that he grows a very long mustache with wax on the tips and starts wearing the highfalutin outfits of the 17th century.
That's exactly right. I can go to Ben's closet and get all of his fancy clothes, and I will be a very good viceroy.
You'll find black T-shirts, Mike. That's all you'll find. You gotta go with another Ben. So let's rock and roll here. We were just again singing the swan song of Merrick Garland here. Now I want to sort of focus on Merrick Garland because Jack Smith is just a dumb tool that Merrick Garland is using, and a hatchet man, as you have called him dozens of times in this program, and for lack of a better term, a legal assassin. But Jack Smith is just a dumb person. He's clearly very stupid. And so the person really behind all this is Merrick Garland. And do I have this right? Is this the worst day of Merrick Garland's life right now?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that Jack Smith is the Scud missile that the Democrats bring in to take out presidential nominees. Jack Smith got brought in to take out former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, a likely presidential or vice presidential contender. In 2016, Jack Smith brought a bogus case against Governor McDonnell, won a criminal conviction that was later reversed unanimously 8-0 by the Supreme Court of the United States. It would have been 9-0, but Justice Scalia passed away. You would think that after you got beat 8-0 at the Supreme Court that you would just go away. He got banished to the Hague, Jack Smith did, and then he got brought back by Merrick Garland and Joe Biden to take out President Trump. And he just got a very bad ruling by Judge Cannon in the Southern District of Florida, where Judge Cannon incorrectly held that the office of special counsel is not constitutional. It violates both the appointments clause of the Constitution and the appropriations clause. If you want to have officers of the United States, new officers of the United States, they must be created by Congress through statute. And the Office of Independent Counsel under Ken Starr was the last independent counsel that was created by statute. Congress let that lapse. And so what did the Justice Department do? They just tried to create the Office of Special Counsel through fiat. And that is unconstitutional, as Judge Cannon correctly held. If you want to have officers, Congress has to pass a law, and that officer must be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. And so Jack Smith essentially has all the powers of every U.S. attorney in the country in his office, and it's created by fiat, by regulation of the Justice Department, and not by statute. And he also essentially gets an unlimited budget, which violates the appropriations clause. And so Judge Cannon correctly dismissed these cases against this case against President Trump down in Mar-a-Lago for the Presidential Records Act case. For presidential records he's allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. And if President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland want to bring new charges against President Trump, you can do it through the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida. That U.S. Attorney manages his assistant U.S. attorneys on a day-to-day basis. They're constrained by Congress. They're constrained by law. They're constrained by a budget, by an appropriation, and they have to make decisions. Do they want to bring a bogus political persecution against President Trump, or do they want to fight, real crimes down in the Southern District of Florida?
Such an important question. So, okay, let's take the bitter personalities out of this that sort of electrify and accelerate the conversation and just look straight at the law. As you've explained it here, Mike, what this does is it makes the president and his Department of Justice less dictatorial and less like an authoritarian terrorist organization in a third world country that can just appoint whoever they want as a political scud missile, as you said. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, and the problem, yeah, exactly. And the problem with the special counsel office created by fiat through regulation is it's not accountable. It's actually intentionally not accountable by regulation. So the Attorney General of the United States, to whom this special counsel is supposed to report, is actually does not run the day-to-day operations of the special counsel's office. So you do not have an officer of the United States managing this special counsel, and that's what makes it unconstitutional. Judge Cannon did exactly the right thing. She's going to take heat for it, but who cares? This is why federal judges have lifetime tenure and pay protection, because they don't have to worry about their next job, and they shouldn't care about the politics. So her job is to follow the Constitution. Her job is to make sure that criminal defendants are not railroaded by the government, and she did her job today.
I do want to, okay, so now that we've covered that, and I think that that's just something that anybody who's clear-eyed should be able to agree with, that you, no matter who's president, the president shouldn't have the right through his Department of Justice to appoint anyone he wants that can have an unlimited budget to destroy his political enemies. It seems rife for abuse, Mike. That seems like not the way a system of checks and balances and law and order should function. So thank you for establishing that. Can we get more granular here? Again, is this the worst day of Merrick Garland's life? This has to be, this side of Bennett getting impeached, this has to be one of the greatest legal humiliations that any attorney general could possibly face. This is doomsday for Merrick Garland, no?
Yeah, so remember, with all of this unprecedented Republic-ending lawfare and election interference by President Biden and his Attorney General Merrick Garland and their special counsel, Jack Smith, and Jay Bratt, the counselor to the special counsel, this is political persecution. You had the Supreme Court of the United States smack them down in two monumental cases. The Fisher case, where the Supreme Court held that the Biden Justice Department has essentially politicized and weaponized a post-Enron obstruction of justice statute intended to go after corporate fraud, to go after Trump and his political enemies. And then the Supreme Court also held that the Biden Justice Department violated the separation of powers and held that that the President of the United States is immune from criminal prosecution for his official acts. Of course he is. Why would he not be? Members of Congress are immune. Federal judges are immune. Why wouldn't the President of the United States be immune? And the Supreme Court had to decide this because President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland took our country to the brink with this lawfare and election interference. And they took the country to the brink in many other ways. Look what just happened to President Trump after President Biden said that President Trump was essentially Hitler and had to be stopped at all cost. And then President Trump was within 1 second and one movement of having his head blown off on national TV. President Biden has gone way too far with his rhetoric. He's gone way too far with his actions. And it's a shame. It's truly shameful what President Biden has done to this country because he hates President Trump so much, and he's so fearful that Trump is going to beat Biden like a drum on November 5th, 2024. Look what Trump's opponents have done to him. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to throw him in prison for the rest of his life. When that didn't work, they tried to just take him off the ballot. And now President Trump's opponents tried to kill him.
How will history remember Merrick Garland and Jack Smith, Mike?
I think that they're a disgrace. Merrick Garland is a disgrace to our country. He has allowed this Justice Department to be politicized and weaponized so he can do his boss's bidding. Thank God that our home state senator Chuck Grassley stopped this nomination of Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court, and then President Trump was able to put my former boss, Justice Neil Gorsuch, on the Supreme Court. Can you imagine where we would be as a country if Hillary Clinton won that election and she was able to replace the late great Justice Scalia with Merrick Garland? I mean, our country would be doomed. If you think the COVID lockdowns were bad, where they took away our God-given rights to speak, associate, worship. They're trying to take away our God-given right to protect ourselves. Just imagine if these leftists take over the Supreme Court. And that's why this election is so important, because the next president is going to appoint 2, maybe 3 justices to the Supreme Court. And do you want President Biden or President cackling Kamala to replace Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court with Tanya Chutkan? Or do you want President Trump to replace Justice Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court with a justice who understands that the very limited but critical role of the Supreme Court in our constitutional order?
Can you that really hit me like a bomb, Mike? Can you please unpack 2 or 3 justices being replaced in the next presidential tenure?
Well, look at the age. You just have to look at the ages of these justices. You have many justices who are going to be in their 70s. Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Alito, the Chief Justice, John Roberts, Justice Sotomayor. I mean, there could be many justices who step down over the next 4 years. And who do you want replacing those justices? Our Supreme Court is the last line of defense that is protecting us from these leftists, from these radicals, from these Marxists. And everything is on the line on November 5th. Our God-given rights to speak, associate, worship, and protect ourselves. And that is why putting President Trump back in the White House is so critically important. It's why it's so critically important that Republicans, conservatives, right-thinking Democrats, and independents rally around President Trump and these Senate candidates, these House candidates. They'll impeach. If Democrats win the House, they're going to impeach these Supreme Court justices. They're already trying to do it. AOC is already trying to do it. So this election is critically important because we saw what these Democrats, what these Biden and Obama Democrats are willing to do. They wanted to bankrupt, imprison for life, take off the ballot, and now assassinate President Trump. They'll stop at nothing. And that's why we need to turn out. We need to vote as early as possible. Do not wait till Election Day, because if you think the BLM and Antifa riots were bad in 2020, just wait for the Hamas riots in 2024. Bank your vote. Vote as early as possible.
Mike, you did bring up Sotomayor, who may well, based on her legal rulings, she may well retire to the hospice of the mentally deranged, just like Joe Biden. I think they might even share a room together. So let's say Sotomayor does decide to resign in the next administration, Donald Trump as president. Would you serve as the viceroy?
The attorney general or even a Supreme Court justice is powerful enough. The viceroy is not accountable to courts or Congress. So I think it's really important that I go serve as the viceroy.
Donald, so there's an article in Axios today, this morning, Mike, and this is my last question for you, saying that Democrats have all but given up in 2024. And they go to multiple members of Congress who are Democrats and saying, we're finished. All the donor money is now going to like the Senate or Congress. That they're in panic. There's total disarray. And there's a real gloom and doom. They're taking Morning Joe off the air. For the love of God, Mike, they're taking Morning Joe off the air. This is how bad things have gotten. So Donald Trump wins. This is not just starry-eyed, buttery optimism now. This is something that looks like Donald Trump is the presumptive president. Okay, so let's just go down there metaphorically. What must Trump do to prevent this in the future? What must Trump do to, as a parent, create a consequence for Jack Smith and Merrick Garland so that they feel some heat, and so that this Biden Justice Department feels some heat in order to put sort of like in order to put a marker in the road, like abandon all hope, ye who wish to bring lawfare here.
Yeah, I mean, what President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland and Jack Smith and Jay Brett and so many others inside and outside of government have done is they've engaged in a criminal conspiracy against President Trump, his top aides like Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon, who are sitting in prison right now, his attorneys like Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman and Jeff Clark, his supporters on January 6th. This is political persecution, and that's very clear that this is political persecution, and the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States in the Fisher case reversed these obstruction charges for January 6th. They have politicized, weaponized, contorted federal statutes to go after Trump, his top aides, his lawyers, his supporters. They have taken our country to the brink. Again, 1 second or one movement difference by President Trump, and his head would have been blown off on national TV. The leading presidential candidate became that close to an assassination. He looked at one screen instead of the other screen. And if he would have looked at the other screen, he'd be dead right now. And that's how close we've come. And it's because I blame this squarely on President Biden. I know that's strong, but I blame it squarely on President Biden because President Biden has demonized President Trump. He has said that President Trump is a fascist dictator, and he has said that we need to stop President Trump at all costs. And that's what almost happened with that assassination attempt. And President Biden should be ashamed of himself. He should bow out of this race. His own party doesn't want him. He is a disgraceful, evil, corrupt old man. I don't say that lightly because I don't think that way about President Obama, even though I strongly disagree with President Obama on many things. I don't think he's an evil man. I think President Biden is an evil man. I think he's a corrupt man. His daughter's diary, Ashley's diary, talks about taking inappropriate showers with her father. This guy is a scumbag. He's a disgrace to this country. He needs to bow out. He needs to go away.
Yeah. And the easiest way to make Joe Biden go away or to punish Joe Biden would be what in a second term? Would it be a special counsel? Would it be a full-scale criminal investigation into a criminal conspiracy? How do you put the screws to the people who've been doing this to Donald Trump in order to say, don't ever do this again?
Well, I would say this, that President Biden should be the happiest man alive after this Fisher decision by the Supreme Court, by this presidential immunity decision by the Supreme Court, and this special counsel ruling by Judge Eileen Cannon, because his old, decrepit, corrupt, evil ass is going to be out of office on January 20th, 2025. No doubt he's going to be gone. And he better be thanking God that these courts, the Supreme Court and Judge Cannon, ruled the way that they did, because otherwise Joe Biden could have been facing the clink.
Wow. Okay. Well, hopefully here, and we'll have plenty of memes of you set and ready to go tonight.
Thank you, sir.
The Viceroy, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Davis.